Hi everyone, Plasthany Tick Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a REDUX review of the Gorillaz album Plastic Beach. This is the 2010 album of the legendary virtual band Gorillaz, brainchild of songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, and producer Damon Albarn, and also artist Jamie Hewlett. This was the third record to drop from the project at the time. I originally reviewed it in 2010, and while I did give it a relatively positive review, I really came to love the album when it came time to finalize my year-end lists. So considering my changed opinion, the relevancy of this album continuing through the past decade, as well as, I don't know, just personally feeling like I've grown as a reviewer since that time, I feel like a redo of the review is in order. I need to do this album some justice.
Oh yeah, baby!
So, yeah, let's do it. Plastic Beach. What a bold, varied, and creative, refreshing change of pace for Gorillaz at the time that this record dropped. Not that the virtual band was ever one to play it predictable from the wild blend of alt-rock, hip-hop, and trip-hop on their debut, to the cinematic art pop and dance jams that were to come on Demon Days several years later. And Plastic Beach sees Damon pushing Gorillaz' musical boundaries even further with bigger features, more ambitious production, and dystopian themes that thread much of this record's material together. Maybe with the mark of a new decade, Damon and Jamie felt like there were some great and not so great changes coming in the next 10 years. And the music on this record certainly seems to reflect that, displaying a combination of excitement, anticipation, but also unease over what's to come. The orchestral intro featuring Sinfonia Viva, set to the sounds of waves crashing and seagulls flying overhead, certainly transports me to a different place, makes the beginning of this record sound larger than life. Then things quickly turn eerie with the following welcome to the world of the Plastic Beach, where legendary West Coast rapper Snoop Dogg pushes lines about pollution, a revolution, a hopeless world. From here, Snoop delivers a very slick series of one-liners and flows as the instrumental grows into this driving, nocturnal, futuristic piece of electro-funk, absolutely pumped up with these bright horn hits and vocoder vocals from 2D. And as Snoop repeats the refrain, "Welcome to the world of the Plastic Beach," it's like we're being invited into some kind of portal, and we need to just go through that to enter this new land. Past this point in the tracklist, we get an incredible run of bangers. There is White Flag featuring Bashi and Kano, where both trade bars about peace and serenity against these lush, gorgeous strings and drums provided by the National Orchestra for Arabic Music, whose instrumentation is blended nicely with Albarn's impeccably cartoony, lively, and unique production. The growling synthesizer leads, the chirping chords, the punchy beats just caked in digital filth. There's not much on this track in terms of a vocal presence from Albarn, which is unfortunate, but the guest performances are so good, and on top of that, the production is just so jam-packed with personality. It couldn't be anywhere else other than a Gorillaz album, truly. Next, we have the featureless Rhinestone Eyes, which is one of the most exciting displays of sound in the Gorillaz catalog. Funny because at first it doesn't really sound like much, with 2D's melancholy lead vocals set to some gentle acoustic guitar and sequenced snares and synths. For sure, the lyrics are intriguing, with references to future pixels, rising waves, and factories, but it does not prepare you for the hard-as-diamond grooves and searing synth lines that pop in. The instrumental shift is so good you don't even need to really sing over it in order for it to work as a hook. Every time the synth line comes back around, a little bit more is added to the mix to intensify it. More wailing synth layers or that chopped-up vocal bit of, "That's electric." The eclectic energy of this LP continues onto STYLO, which is an incredible and surprising change of pace for the record at this point, as we get these 80s electro grooves, neon synthesizers, and fuzzy rap verses from Mos Def, as he was known at the time. Some passionate lead vocals from the late soul singer Bobby Womack, too. There are just so many seemingly disparate elements on this track, somehow functioning in perfect harmony, including 2D's refrains of "Overload, overload, overload, which sound like they would do really well on a coked-up dance floor decades ago. But despite the unlikely crossover of musical styles and guests on this track, it still ends up being a super catchy and compelling portrayal of a world that is overloaded, overstimulated, electric. Super Fast Jellyfish is one of the more hip-hop driven and cartoony cuts on the record. The track sports features from hip-hop legends De La Soul and also Super Furry Animal's own Griff Rhys. And aside from the sunny synth-backed hook, the track kind of sounds like a song from MF Doom and Danger Mouse's Danger Doom. From the beat to the humor and the personality, it is a tad derivative, and I wouldn't be surprised if Damon had an appreciation for that project, considering he's worked with both artists. And while I do wish the song varied up a bit more on the second verse, I do like what it's trying to add to the record narratively, with its obvious nods to consumerism, advertising, refined food, and how all of that plays into the pollution themes. Empire Ants is one of the true mind blowers on the record, famous for its dreamy introduction that sounds like taking a psychedelic island vacation. This whole portion of the track effectively puts the listener into a lull, basically like Damon is just gonna, let us coast on this super beautiful melancholy vibe for a few minutes. But then suddenly the whole track quickly transitions with a few chords of bubbling arpeggios, introducing yet another bumping 80s electro groove, this one even harder than the one on STYLO. It just blasts through the mix like a wrecking ball. Then Little Dragon's Yukimi Nagano drops in with all of these slick, sweet vocal lines set against these high-pitched, droning cinematic synth notes and tight rhythms. In retrospect, as I listen to it more, I do think the vocals are a little too swallowed in reverb on this mix, but the orgasmic vibe is still very much there all these years later. Then the following Glitter Freeze featuring Mark E. Smith of The Fall fame is a lot like Aries from the new Song Machine Season 1 project, in that it's Albarn indulging in a little bit of hero worship from what I can hear. He lets the fact that he's pulled this post-punk legend onto this song drive him to a place where he's essentially creating his own synthetic, psychedelic, dystopian version of the Fall's jammy, noisy, linear songwriting style. To this day, it's a vibe I'm not entirely sure really translates to the production that Damon has delivered on this track. Maybe Mark E. Smith could have done more vocally on the song too. I commend it for what it's trying to do, though. Then on Some Kind of Nature, we get a crossover with an even bigger music legend. That would be the one and only Lou Reed. To this day, this track remains one of my favorite Gorillaz songs ever, not only because of its strangely beautiful combination of muddy piano, synthetic beats, distortion shots, as well as groaning synths, but also the way Lou Reed's stiff and aged vocals contrast nicely with 2D's slick harmonious choruses. I think the instrumental breakdown on the pre-choruses as well, where Lou Reed's vocals are skipping almost as if he's a robot at that point, reflects a lot of the themes of the album quite nicely. In fact, I think this is one of the best tracks on the record when it comes to bringing these themes of an artificial, phony, plastic world to bear. The lovely and blissful Melancholy Hill is a vintage piece of synth pop that features what I think is one of the most direct vocal performances that Damon has ever put on a Gorillaz record. Up on Melancholy Hill, there's a plastic tree. But then the following Broken, which feels thematically very connected to this track, moves in an eerier direction with its synth pop stylings and feelings of longing. Lyrically, Albarn, or 2D, seems to be referencing personal distance between him and a significant other, as if it's distance between stars. And also, Glitter Freeze is maybe the most ingenious way of referring to a starry sky that I've ever heard. We then get another wild change of pace with the song Sweepstakes, which undergoes an incredible metamorphosis across its runtime. The intro is so zany and experimental, packed with shuffling noises and off-kilter beats, over which I am amazed that Mos Def or much less anybody is rapping. The instrumentation then just grows more surreal and psychedelic as it progresses, and then eventually it bursts into this driving horn-backed funk. Considering Following the themes of the rest of the record, the song sounds like the soundtrack to consumerism, commotion. We then get the wondrous title track, which is loaded with the sandpaper synth leads and wondrous arpeggios. The vocal performance and mix here leaves the track feeling like Gorillaz are on the verge of either melting or falling asleep. Everything is just sounding so unrecognizable and mutated as the album progresses. It feels like the world is getting more fake, more plastic, more unreal. Stylistically, To Binge is a very funny and creative approach to a dreamy surf rock duet. Little Dragon is back in the cut too, with Yukimi trading these heartwarming and also heart-wrenching lines with Damon, as both of them portray in a sour and somewhat schmaltzy way the destruction drinking too much can bring to a relationship. As for the album's final moments, we have a stunning vocal performance from Bobby Womack set to these bare and shimmering synthesizers on Cloud of Unknowing. It's not the most well-structured song on the entire record, but it does work as a motif. It's an emotionally powerful moment. Still to this day leaves me feeling like I'm being transported into space. Then the closing pirate jet feels almost like a credits roll moment for the LP, or even a cliffhanger that leaves us off with a very weird and unsettling feeling. Damon's singing on this track, the tone of his voice, and also the lyrics too, he doesn't even sound like himself or 2D in this particular moment. If you read into the lyrics of this track, it's almost as if he's playing the plastic maestro at this point on the record. And things for him are essentially ending pretty well, as the plastic world he created is growing and ongoing, which I guess, yeah, that has been the case since the release of this record. So yes, those are my updated thoughts on this LP. Still, today there are maybe a few spots and ideas I'm not so crazy about, or I think could have been done better for sure. But for the most part, I think this album has aged incredibly over the years. The production, the features, and the overall concept too, all of which I just think become more and more relevant as the world goes on, which as I think of that and I say that, that's not entirely a great thing. For the world, I mean, you know? Feeling a decent to strong 9 on this album. Transition, have you given this record a listen? Do you love it? Do you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? What should I do a redux of next? And yeah, that's all. Anthony Fantano, Gorillaz. For